Hey, Kimmy. Hey, Deb. I'm not feeling good either, Deb. Hey, Cool Gamer. Hey, Patty. I think it's the weather. My house has been shaking all night, all morning, and right up until, hey, hi, guy, until, I don't know, I think it stopped around 4. So I haven't slept at all. And because of the weather, I get freaking headaches and stuff. I just feel out of it. I could sleep. Hey, Navajo Blondie. Hey, Kimmy. Hi, Brian. Oh, that's fine, Brian. No, that's awesome. She needs to go to bed. She can go to bed. Right? That, oh my God, I always get headaches all the time, every time there's a storm. But I don't understand why we're having a fucking ice storm right now. Um, it's never have been heard of that I can recall. Can I go to bed, bruh, right? There's never been an ice storm in Canada in April. Like, what the hell? It's literally thundering and it's raining, but it's ice raining. So the buses were canceled today because it's a huge slip and slide out there. I don't even know if they'll be able to if they're going tomorrow. But holy crap, was that thunder loud? I mean, yeah, thunder's loud, but all of the pets were terrified. Every time I fell asleep, I was woken up by a big blast. Like I've never heard thunder like that in a long time. So yeah, I'm really tired. And it's jumpy. I don't know. This is never, but the last ice storm we had was what, like 1998. That took out all the power and everything. It was bad. A lot of people died. No, I'm not prepared. Well, I got candles. I got flashlights. I got water. Oh, it's the new meds. Oh, really? I was gonna say, if that storm's starting up again, I'm wondering what caused it. Was there like some sort of tornado or hurricane or something that went on? Okay, so we are at, why did I put that? Oh, shit. I lost it. No. That's why there was a friggin' bookmarker, but this one I have marked as well. Oh, this is the one. What's that guy's name? That Rodrigo, that's where we were listening to, I was reading about. All right, so now I don't know if I went past this or, oh yeah, I did read that. Okay, we're on chapter 4. Sorry about that. He had a big storm forming over Chicago area. Damn, it was when all I could do was smoke weed, so I smoked a lot of weed. Yeah, you were complaining. That's right. You were saying the storms. I don't know what the hell's going on in Canada, but that was wow. And we did lose power at least, I don't know, 10 times. It's like off on, off on, off on. I'm like, holy crap. All right, so we're on chapter 4. And this is called In Permanent Limbo. She kept asking for dispensation. until her doctor turned into the devil incarnate. Are you bored? I'm live. I know, I'm sorry. The PlayStation broke today. I don't know what you know what? Maybe I can get like that high guy or Rev or one of those guys to help us. Or Trio. Trio will know. Duh. I didn't think of that. So Leland's PS4, I don't know. It will turn on, but he can't do anything with it. It keeps saying to report the problem. And then when you go to report, of course you can't. So I don't know. We should try that. Or call your father. Tell him to get his butt over here. He'll know what to do.
Today,
Hello. No.
don't be thinking it's coming today. It won't happen. This is what-
So Scandinavians and Roman Catholics have devised a place between paradise and purgatory to get rid of a theological difficulty. If there is no sin without intention, then infants and idiots cannot commit sin, and if they die, cannot be consigned to the purgatory of evildoers. But not being believers or good doers, they cannot be placed with the saints. The Roman Catholics place them in the paradise of infants and the paradise of fools. Huh? This is by E. Coben Brewer. Dictionary of a phrase and fable. Okay. So one of the smaller, more Spartan items unearthed in the attic was a tattered doctor's bag bearing several poorly legible tags, barely held together by its frame, its fake alligator skin going to shreds. It contained a curious mixture of things. A worn-out ace bandage. I have no idea what that is. Small bottles with dried out tincture of iodine, and gold of iodine. Oh my God, of iodine, gold leaf, black shoelaces, and a hollow red apple filled with buttons. A hollow red apple filled with buttons, needles, notions, and findings. A bounty of religious items commingled with the remnants of domestic whatever, and handcraft. A small piece of white wool pinned, some red silk with buttonhole stitches bearing the embroidered writing. Behold the heart that has loved men so much. With the heart in the center ring the thorns with the cross on top, flames and rays emanating all around. On the bottom it says 100-day indulgences. There are several loose votive cards and inscriptions. Our Lady of Perpetual Help, Lord, thy will be done. Behold, I am thy handmaid. I love thee. I want thee. I know that thou art there. How many others? I don't know what this woman's talking about. After further down the recesses of the bag, everything covered with desiccated acorn seeds, sat a well-worn Bible with dozens more votive cards. I don't know what a votive card either, what if that is either. And hand-scribbled notes as page holders, address books, notes, hymns, and a package of letters, postcards, calling cards, an entire life thrown together in a space made to hold just a few doctor's tools. Ironically, many other Willard patients brought doctor's bags with them that ended up on top of the luggage pile extracted from the attic, but none of them held as potent a distillate of the life bundled together by religious devotion in a fight for soul survivor. I'll take pictures and I'll put them in the community tab. They're really interesting, these photos. It's black and white. You barely see it, but these are what they look like. Like there's her book down there that she's written in. That's amazing to find. I love stuff like that. Not surprisingly, the owner of the bag was a person of the cloth, a woman who had chosen the path of abdication and devoted herself to an earthly life of spiritual work. She was born Teresa Liener in the Bavarian village, can't pronounce that, of Oberpfalz, I can't, which has been on record since the year 869. Posting Oberpfalz. I'm pretty sure that's not even close, but so that has been on record since 869. Her father, George, was a widower, and she seemed to have just a few cousins in nearby towns. Unlike most other suitcase owners, Teresa's story did not come together so easily. Even though her single bag contained a great deal of information, she had changed her name. Her medical record had been misfiled and appeared rather miraculously after a search of several years. And in the course of the confinement at Willard, she became one of the more disturbed people in the entire group. Therefore, posthumanist pasting together of her life is not simply an exercise in puzzle. These words are crazy. Hey, sweet pea. In puzzle gamemanship. Like you're like that long. Ooh. But an act of redemption. There are many reasons to consider the writing of Teresa's story as an act of recovery, a healing afterlife, something her Dominican sisters would wholeheartedly endorse. In fact, talking to some of the sisters of their order in their large convent at Sparkhill, New York, overlooking the Hudson River, one can feel a deep sense of awe and puzzlement comes up at the mentioning of the story about their sister lost to madness who never received the burial due to a Christian woman. Really? Thus, Sister Marie, that's not Ursula, Ursuline. Okay. Thus, Sister Marie Ursulane's story comes together with hesitation, pausing at every turn. We are struck by the enormity of her emotional pain and the futility of any remedies efforts 6 years after she died. Eerily, Father Henry Dominique Lacordaire, the biographer of Saint Dominic, the founder of the order she joined, had this as his motto: "Time will hold this pen when I am gone, and to time leave without fear or jealousy the duty of complexion." Even more surprisingly, the quote is contained in a small biography of Mother Antonia Fisher, a Dominican prioress who recruited the 16-year-old Teresa from Germany to the long trip across the ocean. It is worth including a glimpse of the serpentine tale that surrounds Mother Antonina Fisher as it provides major clues to Sister Marie's unraveling. I can't get it together today. Sorry, I'm trying. A picture of Mother Antonina shows a towering woman, supported by a stack of books, a snarling bastion of religious fortitude in a sea of uncertainty. She must have been a very powerful anchor for the young woman like Teresa, who had jettisoned, I don't even know what that means, all worldly ties and placed their lives in the hands of their religious authority. When Mother Antonia, oh my God, was ousted from her post as prioress of the convent in Great Bend, Candace by the Bishop of Chicago, for reasons too bizarre and complicated to explain here, several of the young nuns who had attracted themselves to her fell prey to total confusion. I'm confused. Hey, Esty. I'm confused too. What the heck did I just do? Amazingly, we have a dual record of the moment when Sister Ursuline was confronted with her fate and how she responded. A copy of the letter she sent to Bishop Hennessy turned up in the tattered doctor's bag, as well as in the archives of the Dominican Sisters in Great Bend. And here is the letter from Ursuline. Hey, Dragon. Excuse me, your lordship, that I bother you, but I have no other choice. Therefore, I must turn to you. On Friday, May 13th, 1910, I had to go to Great Bend, but I did not know why. 4 years ago, I made my final profession to Great Bend in Mother Antonia Fisher. On Saturday, May 14th, I was called to a room next to Father Hyman, Mother Seraphine, the next prioress, Sister Bona, Sister Louise. Father Hyman read a letter written by you and gave a little talk. Within a half an hour, everything was over with me. After the little talk, Father Hyman asked whether I would want to remain even after Mother Seraphine was prioress. I said no. After the Father Hyman demanded I take off the habit and without money and clothing be sent away. And that day, May 14th, I had to sign my name. I was frightened and got the idea that it would be better to run away than to have the habit taken from me without cause. And I did run away, as a sister, to Windhorse to pack my belongings, and from there I came to Ellenwood to the sisters because I did not want to go back to the world. Now I would like to go with Mother Antonia because I was rejected at Great Bend and do not know where to go. I would also like to know if I am free from my final vows because Father Hyman sent me away. Also, I do not know if I can go to confession and communion. I must and will trust God. Yes, the dear Lord must help me because I do not want to run away, but was forced to do so. Respectfully, M. Ursuline, OSD. The paper which Sister Ursuline was expected to sign reads as follows. Okay, so for some reason she got kicked out of convent. Sounds like. This is her. Doesn't look like she's in her. Okay, so the paper which Sister Ursuline was expected to sign reads as follows. I, Ursuline, being of sound mind and memory and fully understanding the import of these presents, do hereby declare in the presence of the undersigned witnesses that of my own free will and accord I leave, never to return to the community of the nuns of the Third Order of the Saint Dominic of Great Bend, Kansas, and that I renounce any and all claims upon said community. The delegate Bishop Joseph Ten gave the following opinion of this procedure. What the hell did she do? Hey, Teresa. There seems to have been an altogether irregular mode of procedure adopted, inasmuch as the person in question was allowed to leave the convent without any provision whatever having been made concerning a dispensation for her vows, which were and are in full force. This matter of obtaining a dispensation from the vows prescinds from the questions of worthiness or unworthiness to remain in a community. It should be attended to in all cases of the dismissal of a religious from a community. I am so confused. What the hell did this poor girl do? The situation haunted Sir Ursuline Teresa for the remainder of her life. She remained in limbo land, from which only madness offered escape. Did she sign this document or not? Did she receive dispensation for her vows or not? Bishop Hennessy never answered the letter. Oh, nice. Sister Ursuline Teresa, I'm just going to say Sister Teresa, and three others stuck by their Mother Superior, and traveled around the country together in search of a home. They knocked on closed doors in Baltimore, Brooklyn, Wichita, and again in Great Bend. On May 23rd, 1911, they sought acceptance to St. Alois School and Convent in California. The school's prioress had doubts whether she could accede those wishes, and once again, no permission was forthcoming from Bishop Hennessy. The little band moved on to San Jose. The sisters of the mission there inquired whether the women were entitled to receive the sacraments or whether they should be considered as excommunicated. What the hell did they do? I don't understand. They moved on and then tried to gain entry into a situation in South Dakota, but nothing worked out for the small band of nuns until they found a new home in the northeast corner of North Dakota. They taught the children of hardy settlers from Austria, Germany, and Scandinavia in the remote country of Fingal, North Dakota, enduring much hardship from 1913 to 1916 when they returned to California. Sister Teresa, however, was no longer with them. She had left North Dakota at some point for unknown reasons and made her way to New York. The frontier of North Dakota experienced a bit of boom in the 1910s when many settlers moved west, coming mostly from German and Northern European countries. The 133 souls of Fingal where Teresa taught high school for 2 years, today still claim 56% Northern European ancestry. The newly built Railroad connected Fairmont, where Mother Teresa had established a tiny convent. with Fingal, quite possibly. Teresa was sent up there, or with one other sister at the most, to teach the children of those isolated farmers. Mother Teresa's fortunes in this forsaken corner of the West plummeted nearly as soon as they began. Getting on in age, ailing, struggling with the unforgiving winters, and still under harsh critique from the Bishop of Wichita. I want to know what she did. I don't understand. Mother Teresa could not keep her little band together. As soon as the clouds of disapproval made their way north from Kansas over the Great Plains, the hearts of the little sisters began to shrivel once again, and their fledgling mothership crumbled away. Sir Marie pined for her family, and desperately tried to get in touch with her father in Germany. Once she was severed from the little band of sisters in arms, probably already by the time she was teaching in Fingo, she had to fall back on her own resources, which had never been well developed. Given her early dedication to a life of the cloth, nuns live under strict rules and leadership, but are taken care of physically and emotionally and are firmly embedded in a structure that gives one complete purpose in life while looking after one's basic material needs. For Senior Marie, her banishment from the mother house where she obtained her final vows meant an even stronger attachment to the Mother Superior who had been condemned by her peers and superiors for reasons beyond our comprehension. That's the reason. It's beyond our comprehension. It's not good enough for me. That's crazy. That's right. You're supposed to take care, like when you're involved with the church, especially priests and nuns and stuff, they get taken care of. It's a lifelong thing, right? Maybe she was possessed. I don't know. For some reason, in the biography of Mother Antonina, Sister Marie Theresa's last name is always misspelled and her birth date given as January 28th, 1880. She entered Holy Cross Convent in Ratisbon, Rosenberg, Germany on May 19th, 1896, received her habit on April 28th, 1898, and made first profession on May 6th, 1899. She arrived in Kansas around 1903 and made final profession on July 28th, 1905. She left the Great Bend on May 18th, 1910, and for a while stayed with Mother Teresa in California. Her name appeared for the last time in documents of the order in the letter written by Mother Pia to the bishop. Back in New York, Senior Marie found refuge among the Dominican Sisters of the Sick Poor on Manhattan's Upper West Side, continued to write letters requesting dispensation, but was also prepared to go into the world by ordering music and improving her organ playing skills, possibly wanting to become a church organist or a piano teacher. In the spring of 1918, with the war over, she once again tried to get in touch with her father, but the letter was never sent. What? Why not? Hey, Tina. She became portlier and needed a new habit for the summer. She received a letter from Sister Yolanda in Brooklyn, a close friend who discouraged her from trying to teach the piano. Believe me, you don't know enough to give lessons. You can give embroidery lessons, but above all, make yourself useful. Help around and try and get a little thinner. It's not nice. Take my advice and rise early in the morning. Don't give scandal to the other sisters who work so hard and are up so early every morning. This was April 16th, 1918. Her despair mounted, as evidenced by a letter written on April 21st, 1918, to Mother Peter, prioress at the Brooklyn convent. I'm not feeling very well. Suffer a great deal with headache. Over the 2 years I have not heard from my dear father. This is very sad indeed. The time will never come for me to see my dear father again, for I have made up my mind never to cross the ocean, and this for many reasons. Some time ago I have asked for my dispensation. Please pray for me, uh, Venerable Mother Peter. You see that I need prayers very bad. Wishing you heavenly peace, and with the world, which the world cannot give. The last letter she drafted was addressed to the Most Reverend John Bonzanzo, the delegate in Washington, D.C., and predated her admission to Bellevue Hospital by a mere 3 weeks. I, Sister Mary Ursuline, L. OSD, is asking your Excellency for my dispensation as soon as possible. I, Sister Mary Ursuline, Have made my final vows at Great Bend, Kansas, in the hands of the Right Reverend John Joseph Hennessy, D.D., Bishop of Wichita, Kansas. I'm the sister that was to see Your Excellency about 3 years ago. Our community in North Dakota is disbanded. And so I don't belong to any community. And as no other community will take me in because I'm not in good health. I remember that your ex really? That's so sad. Hey, Mamu. Whatever she did was so bad at that time, it wasn't supposed yeah, because they're not even telling me in the book. The authors aren't even telling me. I'm wondering. That's when I read something about the devil, so I have a feeling they're gonna say she might have been possessed or something. Okay, yeah. Her doctor turned into the devil incarnate. That's where I got it from. I remember that Your Excellency had asked me if I wanted dispensation, and I have refused to take dispensation because I have hoped to get back to one of my own communities that is either back to Brooklyn or to Kansas, but it is in vain. I'm refused by both. Thanks, Tina. Tripping over boobs. Yeah. Because right now when I run, I'll probably get a black eye. 2 weeks later, on June 27th, 1918, she stood before Judge Pendleton, who certified her for commitment to a state hospital based on the findings of the doctors Theron Voshberg and Brink of Bellevue Hospital. Why? Because she was in poor health? Was it good? That's awesome, Dragon. So, Sir Ursuline had probably been there no more than a week. Their report to the judge described her as excited, noisy, and destructive, and general manner is silly and childish. She is very impulsive and becomes so restless that she has to be restrained. She runs about in a nude so she runs about in a nude condition, is playful, and shows overactivity. And psychomotor, I don't even know what that one is evidently a mentally defective. Her replies to question are irrelevant, evasive, as she says, I don't know. No extent information can be obtained from her. I didn't know that she was like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, is the doctor the Bible? I don't know what the hell is going on. I think she's done something. I don't know what. Like running around naked. I didn't know, like, she was sick mentally. I didn't know that up until now. How a person could be transformed almost overnight from a writer of coherent letters, oh, to a childish and mentally defective person is hard to fathom. On the other hand, what choice did she have? Oh my gosh, I think it sucks, Patty. I completely lost my spot. So what choice did she have? To keep wearing a habit that might have been sinful for her to wear, to keep impersonating the nun she was no longer allowed to be, wear the scapular and veil one day and trade them in for a business suit the next? Were there any signs in the build-up to that day in June 1918 when she stood before the judge, seemingly feeble-minded and incoherent? And there's a question mark. Dragon. She certainly was despondent and desperate about her religious and worldly status, which were both in suspense. Why would that be suspenseful? Religion suspenseful to them? But she kept herself active nonetheless, kept knocking on doors even though her knocks became progressively muter, muffled by the sadness that had engulfed her, no longer feeling that she could succeed in her umpteenth attempt to have her situation resolved by some I can't say that word by something expected. Nearly from one day to the next, she dropped her resolve and her Ferris waist, exchanging her grown up personality for the kind of regressed demeanor that we expect from young children throwing a tantrum, but not from a well educated school teacher who stood her ground in the prairie of North Dakota. That is strange. I don't know, Patty, because I did ask one of the I don't even know what the hell manager or whatever. He said no, don't keep doing that. I'm supposed to leave it up to them to fix it, but clearly they're not. What does regression mean in the context of psychosis, schizophrenia, or dementia praecox, as Sir Marie was diagnosed in 1918? This term comes from a model of mental functioning that talks about layers of consciousness and more or less developed levels of the mental activity. Each one peeled off gives way to another. Lower level, the childish, more primitive aspects of the personality. The model used by biological psychiatry to explain so-called schizophrenia or dementia is generally the opposite. It posits a brain-based process that injects toxins into itself, a coursing of excessive humors, a sprouting of malignant neurons, almost cancer-like, that overrides anything sensible, focused or adult. To understand what might have happened to her, we need to resort to a more dynamic model, and that permits the assumption that under certain circumstances, the mind finds a radical solution by relinquishing its attachment to conventional reality and gives way to the very opposite of the principles the person had followed all her life. A nun running naked is as poor girl. A nun running naked is an almost comical but highly relevant example of such an unleashing. Sinfulness takes over, but can only do so in the guise of madness. Feeble-mindedness, feeble-mindedness, feeble-mindedness is not vain. It simply permits the person to abandon all responsibility, obviously at the risk of falling prey to the workings of the psychiatric system. If she had lived in another time or another place, Teresa might have been subjected to some kind of exorcism. I knew it. That's what it was. She had the devil in her. So it says if she had lived in another time or in another place, Teresa might have been subjected to some kind of exorcism or another church sanctioned ritual to drive the madness devil out of her. And under certain circumstances, such an unconventional approach might have even succeeded, especially if the person understood that the church was taking charge once again, bringing her back into the fold, albeit in a rather brutal manner. On the other hand, and not unlike the fate of many predecessors who went mad without being sanctified, she might have suffered torture, even death at the stake. Oh, for being witch, perhaps. For Teresa, entering the mental health system meant relinquishing all traces of her former life. On her admission sheet to Willard, the word unknown was entered 11 times, encompassing her date of birth, her parents' names, her education, even her religion. This was more than a year after she was brought to Bellevue Hospital in Manhattan, during which time the staff would have had ample opportunity to investigate her background further. No one knew or believed that she was wearing a habit until a few days before admission, and that for all practical purposes, she was still considered a fully professed member of religious order and had never received dispensation. It was not for lack of information that the hospital never acknowledged her religious background and the centrality of her spiritual conflict. At her admission interview to Manhattan State Hospital on June 28, 1918, Teresa said, I don't hear voices. I don't see visions. I feel silly. I am not crazy. I am nervous. I had an operation for gallstones 3.5 or 4.5 years ago in North Dakota. I am in New York 4 years only. I live at 140 West 61st Street with the Sisters of the Sick Poor. I was stubborn. I did not want to steal. They said I had a pull. I got excited over the war. I'm all mixed up. I feel downhearted. She herself was trying to draw a line between her condition and certifiable madness, silly versus crazy, nervous, but not hearing voices. Did she attribute her nervousness to the operation in North Dakota? She reveals something that never gets explained anywhere. I was stubborn. I did not want to steal. They said I had a pull. A major infraction, something she did against her better knowledge, under the influence of an external power. A malicious force, maybe the devil. Feeble-minded is when you're old. Okay. I really didn't expect the devil. I was actually like half joking. But no one believed what she explicitly told them. The doctors ignored her spiritual woes and apparently chose to assume that her entire existence prior to coming to the hospital was a figment of her imagination. Wow. Oh, I love asparagus. I just had that yesterday. So good. That's how I cook the asparagus too, is in the oven with olive oil, a little bit of garlic powder, salt, and then Parmesan cheese on top. Oh, it's good. Now I want asparagus. They treated her like a mad newborn child, and she acted accordingly. Now you want to. On February 19th, 1919, Ree was among a group of 116 men and women put on a train up the Hudson River from Manhattan State Hospital under an order of transfer by the New York State Hospital Commission. When spoken to, Marie put her head down on the table and said, I want to get out of here. I'm just pulled around and treated like a fool all my life. She had been pulled away from her parental home into a convent, shipped across the ocean, traveled thousands of miles, zigzagging around America, fled back to New York City, and was now in a mess of mad folks sent up the river. No wonder she had a pull in another direction. At Willard, she started to work in the sewing room. 2 months after her arrival, she began to resist, was stubborn, and gave trouble in the tailor shop. Exposed herself to men, oh my god, lady, patients, and refused to work. As a result, she was thereafter kept on the ward. Sexuality is frowned upon in state hospitals as it is in religious convents. Women and men are kept in separate quarters. Masturbation will land you in hell. Public display of sexuality will get you a trip to the madhouse. Being treated like a fool, you soon start acting like one. That makes sense. Inserted between pages 372 and 373 of her prayer book. So she wrote, Prayer to Saint Jude, Thaddeus, apostle and martyr, to be said in great affliction, or when one seems to be deprived of all visible help, and for cases despaired of. Saint Jude, glorious apostle, faithful servant, and friend of Jesus, pray for me, who am so miserable. Make use, I implore you, of that particular privilege accorded to you, to bring visible and speedy help where help was almost despaired of. Come to my assistance in this my great Come to my assistance in this my great need, that I may receive the consolations and secure of heaven in all my necessities, tribulations, and sufferings. Time flies at Willard, at least when measured by the frequency of observations entered in a patient's record. In Marie's case, this happened about every 3 months. At times, is assaultive, usually remains alone, smiles in response when spoken to, has a sexual trend. In December 1920, things seemed to take an even more bizarre turn. She began to claim that there were live chickens in that's weird, you just talking about chickens and eggs. She began to claim that there were live chickens inside her hatched from eggs she had eaten. What? Okay, so there was wow. So there was live alive they chickens were alive and they were hatched from their eggs. From what? So she began in 1920, December 1920, things seemed to take bizarre turns. She began to claim that there were live chickens inside her, hatched from eggs that she had eaten. Becoming more suspicious, especially about the food given to her, she took to scraping her bread carefully before eating it. And on March 24th, 1922, she had a physical altercation with two female attendants, pounding on one severely and nearly tearing the uniform off the other one, which landed her on a more secure ward in Chapin Hall. We can't know what prompted this altercation, which was described as an assault on the staff member. Such attacks are rarely unprovoked. No paranoia was noted when Marie was brought to Bellevue Hospital 3 years earlier, and neither at Manhattan State Hospital, nor for the first 2 years at Willard. Either she turned against the institution or the institution turned against her. It was a match made in hell. And then it says, inserted between page 108 and 109 of her prayer book. Prayer. Look down upon me, good and gentle Jesus, while before thy face I humbly kneel and burning soul pray and beseech thee to fix deep in my heart lively sentiments of faith, hope and charity, true contrition for my sins, and a firm purpose of amendment, the while I contemplate with great love and tender pity thy 5 wounds, pondering over them within me, while I recall to mind the words with David. Thy prophet said of thee, my Jesus, they pierced my hands and my feet, they numbered all my bones. Things soon quieted down for Marie at Chapin Hall, and she was sent back to a more easygoing ward after a few months. State hospitals today still have these kinds of secure or special treatment units where patients are placed when they are deemed too unruly or dangerous in the other wards. I'd hate to be in that situation. The special treatment units, hell no. Treatment there consists of aggressive pharmacology and behavioral control. In those years at Willard, drugs were used only rarely, mainly barbiturates or chloral hydrate if someone was completely out of control. Given their serious risks, including death if used excessively or not monitored properly, doctors avoided using these drugs whenever possible. Instead, they liberally used restrictions and physical restraint. Apparently, Mary Marie, sorry, became calmer without medication, another sign that her paranoia was related to her environment. A change in personnel and the way they approached her had dramatic effect. This was inserted in pages 104 and 105 of Teresa's prayer book. I wish. I wish I could really and truly could pray with an earnest mind to be humbled, despised, forgotten, in the cross true joy to find. Oh, I wish I could wish for suffering. May it be my only pride, to be trodden even as the dust, to know but my God crucified. For heaven is won by much suffering. No cross, then, no crown to gain. Ah, me. It is hard to be holy if we shrink from every pain. She doesn't sound crazy. She actually sounds kind of intelligent. Like, if a trifling word of unkindness maketh the heart sick and faint, my good God, oh, change me, or never shall I be a saint. In the next couple of years, Marie, who now called herself Tressa, was transferred back and forth several times, was said to harbor many absurd delusions, and became assaultive at times. Clearly, she had become mired in a rather demoralizing cycle, and yet, once again, she started to write letters. Respectful Mr. Biswick, did she have access to a typewriter, or did someone take the time to transcribe this letter? This letter was dated June 22nd, 1925. So they don't even know if she wrote this. Dear sir, by addressing you as a respectful, I mean that I really do know, sorry. By addressing you as a respectful, I mean that I really do not know you from no place. And that of course means you, my dear sir, are very unknown to me, Miss Tressa L. The principal thing of a fact, which I have heard, first by cold wiring, then by warm wiring, which were the very true words of Miss Wright, nurse of Ward 2. Therefore, dear Sir Burswick, let me know the truth. If this is really your desire to adopt me as your darling child, then to be engaged for 9 months and then to marry me as your lawful wife, what the hell is she talking about? So if this is all true, and I will really and truly give my full consent, oh my gosh, this poor girl. Since I was put in Urkel and discussed, I'm trying very hard to find out my real parents' names. But up to now, I did not succeed, which is very shameful indeed. Dear Sir Biswick, I was never engaged nor ever married. I have but only one child, which should be a boy, and one dog, a dachshund of which both I should be the real mother. Must close my letter. Present I'm in Ward 9. I will give this letter into the hands of head nurse Miss Hillard, Ward 1. Yours truly, respectful, Tressa L., Ward 9. It is. It is, Patty. Now we're back to the author. Pretty crazy stuff, or not. The mother of a dachshund and parthenogenetically conceived, cold and warm wiring, overheard conversations of nurses and attendants. Who is this Mr. Biswick, and where is Urkel? Teresa acted like a parentless child, ready to be adopted and married off at the same time. After her own devices, without any type of dialogue or therapy, a person in such a regressed and vulnerable state of mind is likely to conjure up all kinds of confused and confusing scenarios. It is unlikely that Teresa ever had any type of sex education, but she probably knew how children were conceived and that humans don't give birth to dachshunds. Oh my gosh. Mental torture, yeah. But maybe she did feel like a mother to a dog she grew up with. In her long ago Bavarian home, where her mother died and left her to an uncertain fate at an early age. Over the next few years, she continued to write letters to unknown men seeking to be married. She still carried chickens inside her and wanted them taken out. When crossed in any way, she will scold and sometimes assault patients. In one of those letters, she writes to Professor Shannar, having heard that he might want to marry her, which she would be perfectly happy to do. She promises to be a good wife and begs him to transfer her at once. As confused as this letter may be, it is a mixture of factual and imagined information. Professor Shannar was also known as Dr. Morrison, who gave birth to Mina Cleven, Teresa's alleged real name. So Teresa and Marie are the same people, and Tressa. I do too. So Professor Shannar was also known as Dr. Morrison, who gave birth to Mina Cleven. And that's apparently what this girl's name is. Not Teresa, not Marie, not Tressa. I think there was a fourth, but her name is Mina Cleven. That's alleged her real name. On January 29th, 1912, in Great Bend, Kansas, when she was actually 32 years old and may have had her gallbladder surgery. Then she tells parts of her true life story. I was a Dominican nun for some years. I entered the Dominican Sisters of Brooklyn, New York. The parish church is Trinity Church, Reverend Father Doffenbach. For the pastor and Mother Antonia Fisher was the prioress when I entered. To read this letter only as evidence of a deranged mind means foregoing an opportunity to connect with its author, who was obviously confused by messages she was getting through the walls of the institution and memories of her life. To help her sort these out might not have been an easy task, but no one ever thought of attempting it. Aw. She wrote another poem, I think, or this is to God. So this is page 86 of her prayer book. She wrote, My dear Lord, you must be loved well, who could never be sufficiently praised, loved and adored as my heart desires to do at every moment. I want to enter into a contract of love with you. My dear Jesus, as often as my heart shall beat, as many times I shall love you completely and adore you in the holiest of sacraments of the altar. Now she wants to marry the Lord? Years went by, punctured by periods of excitement, which meant irritable moods, especially around those times of the month. Okay, so but when she got her period every month, she went nuts. She kept mostly to herself, except when irked and bothered by fellow patients or staff, sometimes finding fault with the food, but to no avail. She worked only under duress. She was mostly neat, sometimes shouting, cursing, and feeling persecuted by staff, often muttering to herself in an undertone. October 19th, 1931. And this is another one she wrote. Heard voices stating one of the ward nurses was going to go after her and kill her. She ran away and broke several windows, cutting herself about her fingers and wrists. That sounds like it's schizophrenia. It's fake, trust me. I have a little nub. Look. Look, that's my nub. It's not thickening out at all. I'm sorry, Miss Thing. So I keep buying some of these. And yeah, that's what I've had to do. It's growing, it's not thickening. Were these simply the diluted vagaries of a freakhox type, or evidence of real terror in the face of abusive staff? There's no way to know for sure, but the fluctuations in Teresa's behavior must have been tried to something other than just the inner whims of a deranged mind. Staff in mental hospitals have been overheard many times making idle and not so idle threats toward their charges. Patients have died in restraints visible to all who share their quarters. Good. Consistently over this several years, Teresa considered herself but a child. Born in 1912, 16, 9, 10 years old, and not aging, if anything, getting younger all the time. A child grows up quickly to become a nun, a teacher of children, never marries, never has sex, is turned into a fool, a mental patient, shipped back and forth from ward to ward, homeless, parentless, waiting to be reborn, adopted, married, and have children of her own. Holy crap. But age began to show itself by attacking the body. Chickens in her belly turned into swollen legs. Huh? Now there's Oh, now she's got swollen legs. Okay. Her delusions heat up. She is surrounded by kaisers, ancient kings, and the president was Franklin Franklin Lincoln in 1933. I don't mean to laugh, but I just expecting to pull off. Should have decided, like, yeah, it's nice, eh? Oh wow, I'm sorry. President was Franklin Lincoln. That's weird. So her body heats up too. Her stomach explodes in pain. She vomits, aches all over. Her legs are inflamed, but she recovers. Condition is unknown. Treatment, hexamethylene. What the hell is that? Looks like she wrote something here as well. Yeah, page 78 of her prayer book. All inner and outer suffering and indispositions, as well as all joys and comforts, which will come upon me one day. Sorry, which will come upon me today. I sacrifice to you in compassion with the bitter suffering and death of my dear Jesus. Yeah. Well, it's so sad. So there is some things in here that are a little funny. Like not laughing at her, but almost thought like the running around naked part. Like I couldn't help myself. I'm just picturing her doing it because she was completely normal one day. She was a nun, and then she goes in. Yeah, me neither. And then she goes into the nut house and she's running around naked. Like, what the hell happened in one day? And her mood changes to euphoria. She's excited, expecting to be sent somewhere any day now, 11 years old and ready for a change. Makes numerous little dolls and figures out of stockings, old blankets, etc. In 1933, a Dr. Evans came on duty and had considerably more to say about Teresa than any of his predecessors during the previous 14 years. Under the heading voluble, friendly, bizarre delusions of grandeur of a religious nature, disoriented, hallucinated, auditory, and visual. Dr. Evan dismisses her claim to be a member of the St. Benedictine order of nuns, which he finds equally delusional as her notions of being 11 and of an imminent transfer to another ward. As far as we know, Teresa never had the opportunity to discuss religious matters with anybody after her arrival at Willard. Her spiritual preoccupations were simply categorized as delusional ideas. I don't think, like, maybe she wasn't a nun, but she has some serious beliefs here. So I wouldn't say it was all delusional at all. No one bothered to check out whether she was indeed a nun. Oh my God, watch her. She probably was. All they needed to do was to go through her doctor's bag, stowed neatly in the attic on the woman's side under the letter L. Her reference for Bishop MacDonald of Brooklyn did not make anyone wonder how she would have known of this person. Her 38 years prior to becoming a mental patient were wiped from her historical record. No wonder she considered herself merely a babe. This is from page 15 of Teresa's prayer book. Dear Father, I appeal to you through Jesus, your Son. Please bestow upon me the fullness of your mercy. Praise the house which I inhabit. Let hell, salvation, and Tugend, virtue, live therein and give me strength. That's supposed to be mercy. So I can follow the example of Maria, but you're Maria. And always act. She's writing all these words down that don't make sense. There's little captions. And always act promptly and willingly on behalf of your honor and the benefit of my fellow human beings. Amen. Yeah, they can definitely piss you off. Yeah. Dr. Evans' charge over Teresa lasted for nearly 5 years. So she was 30 years old when she went into this thing, into this hell. And first day she was there, she's running around naked and pretending she's a child that wants to get married too. I mean, huh? He seems to have known her quite well, and she sometimes considered him her second father. Unlike many long-term patients who appear to burn out, she continued to preoccupy herself with religious themes pertaining to life and death, her whole on earth, important ancestors, and the coming redemption. In her past lives, she believed she had been murdered many times, but kept coming back in a new body. Joyously, Teresa expected to die for the final time in the near future, this being the last body she was supposed to have. In spite of these very fluid and extravagant preoccupations, Dr. Evans considered her memory for events previous to her commitment quite accurate, and yet he hardly noted that she told him about the other life of hers. Her next doctor heard a new story about her religious admission. She was the Lorden, maybe a German ending, as in the Lord her, the female Lord, the right hand of the Lord. He observed about Maria, the Lord created stam fathers, and that was the end of paradise. She has the color for many sensations. For instance, the electricity is crimson red. She says she is 20 years old and she is double rich. She can hear God's voice, and this is a diamond country, and she has to have a certain weight before she can die. It's quite specific. Oh yeah, I remember that one lady told her she had to lose weight and to get up early and to work. That's probably where she got that. The account of Teresa's last decade at Willard is hard to stomach. Oh no. Oh good, there's only a little bit left. The chart entries get progressively grimmer, bearing witness to a great deal of physical suffering on top of her delusional preoccupations. The fact that she lived as long as she did with all the ailments she had is remarkable, but not likely due to exemplary medical care. She was a lost soul, living out her years in mental and physical agony, only offset by her conviction that she would be saved one day and by her many attempts to stay useful to the nurses on the ward. In her ailing condition, she still wanted to help out on the ward even when told she had to stay in bed. On December 1st, 1949, at the age of 69, Marie Ursuline OSD Nee Teresa Wiener was finally absolved from her earthly suffering. The record does not tell us if she received the final sacraments. Her remains were removed for dissection to the Syracuse University Medical School. The state of New York saw fit to turn her over to science and thereby deprived her of the funeral rites due to a Catholic sister. That was like the worst thing they could do. They would hope she doesn't come back and haunt their ass. I would. Officially, she had never received a dispensation and should have been buried in her full habit in spite of the years she spent in limbo of fools. As a frontispiece of her prayer book, with accompanied her from Germany all through the United States and finally up to Willard, she affixed the following prayer. Open up your holy heart, dear Jesus, show me its loveliness and write me with it forever and ever. May every breath and every beat of my heart, even in my sleep, be a witness of my love for you and tell you perpetually, yes, Lord, I love you. Please kindly accept the little good that I have accomplished and bestow upon me the mercy to help me rectify the evil deeds that I committed so that I can praise you today and forever. Amen. This chapter, which I'll read uh probably next week, unless it's short. It's not short. But this one sounds horrific as well. Actually, I don't think it's too long. Maybe I will just read it. Okay, I'll read it. So this is chapter 5. This one's called Children Died and She Knit Her Life Away. Really? No last rites, nothing. Yeah, what year did she pass? 1949, December 1st. So this must be, okay, this is Miss Ethel Smalls. And she was the one who knit her life away, if you can see that photo. One summer day in 1930, Miss Ethel Smalls felt tired and took to her bed. She was 40 years old. After 22 years of marriage, she had just divorced her abusive husband, who drank to excess, was an unpredictable provider, and ran around with other women. As a young wife, she had 2 children in quick succession, then a miscarriage, and then surgery to remove an ovarian tumor. Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, no meds ever. Later, she endured the death of 2 infant daughters. Oh no. Doris, who died just a month before her first birthday, and Irma, who survived barely 4 weeks. Her father died of cancer shortly thereafter. Holy shit. The same summer of 1930, her 2 living children, Ruth and Harold, were both recently married, and after their parents' divorce, the family home in Ithaca was broken up, belongings were sold, parceled out to relatives, or put into storage. It was the Depression, and money was scarce. So Miss Smalls took a room in the nearby village of Freeville, bartering some furniture and her dressmaking skills for rent and board. After just a few weeks, she and the landlady had falling out, and Ethel was ordered to leave. Instead, she said she was ill and took to bed. 2 days later, the landlady called the authorities, stating that she heard Miss Smalls laughing in the middle of the night. Oh my God, she's probably dead. And that Ethel constantly consulted the spirits about where she should go and what she should do. Oh boy. She was examined by her family doctor, Dr. Homer Gemmo, who found her in the following condition: staying in bed, tongue very coated. What does that mean? Coated with what? Saliva? Pasties? Staying in bed, tongue very coated, temperature is 99.1, heart's rapid, seems run down, and subnormal physically. The doctor noted that Ethel exhibited no absolute delusions in her presence. She made statements that, according to the best history obtainable, were not true. She's in a home and refused to leave after being ordered out and used vulgar and obscene language. These observations were sufficient cause for a judge to commit her to Willard State Hospital, to which she was escorted by a nurse, a state trooper, and her doctor. Welcome to Willard. Then it says, spirits abound. The village of Freeville, both then and now, was home to the Spiritualist Center of America, a retreat founded in 1897, where spiritualists from across the English-speaking world gathered to hear preachers, consult with healers, and cultivate contact with the spirits that they believe survived death. Wow. Modern spiritualism, as opposed to the belief in a spirit world, common among the animist religions of indigenous peoples, arose in the mid-19th century during a wave of Christian religious fervor in western and central New York. Around the same time and in the same area, Joseph Smith founded Mormonism, and a farmer named William Miller predicted that the Second Coming would occur in 1844, sparking sparking the Millerist sect. The apparent failure of his prediction did not stop his following from growing exponentially, eventually becoming known as the Seventh-day Adventists. That's where that came from. A number of Shaker communities and the secular utopian community of Oneida was also established in the region. The Shaker and the Oneida communities vanished by the end of the 19th century, but the spiritualists in Freeville continued to thrive, building a meeting house, visitors' cottages, a hotel, and a dining hall to accommodate the many seekers who arrived in the Lehigh Valley or New York Central Railroads, which converged there. Spiritualism was especially popular during just after the World War I. As grieving families of dead soldiers, sought evidence that their sons, brothers, and husbands' spirits were still lingering around. The spiritualist compound, a large collection of whitewashed clapboard structures, was the center of activity in Freeville during this time, and much of the small town's economy was based on feeding, housing, and transporting the visitors. The energy emanating from this place in 1930, when thousands of seekers from all over the country came to commune with the spirits, would have been hard to ignore for anyone living by, especially someone like Ethel, who had lost two children and had been beaten by her husband. That's so sad. Son of a bitch. Ethel Smalls was a devout woman, active in church, work, and service to the poor. But if she came to Freeville as a spiritual seeker, perhaps wishing to contact her dead children, there is nothing in her medical record or among her papers that speaks to the issue. While Ethel perhaps strategically denied during her admission interview that she consulted the spirits, such behavior would not have seemed at all unusual in the village of Freeville during that time she lived there. Okay, the person's daughter. Born in 1889 in Ithaca, Ethel Black Small. Okay, so she's the person's daughter. Ethel Black Smalls was one of three children of a minister and his wife. But little is known about her childhood, which was apparently unremarkable, came from her admission interview and discussions the staff had with her brother and sister. As a youngster, she was especially interested in music, playing the piano and singing in the church choir. As an adult, she continued these avocations and headed the music committee at her church. Ethel completed the 11th grade and in 1908 married Seymour Smalls. I was 18 and foolish, she remarked to a doctor at Willard who asked her about her marital history. She described difficult births, a miscarriage, and her husband's lack of help when she faced a sudden need for surgery. You see that there was three children, right along, and I was weak. Then the doctor said the trouble was you have got an ovarian tumor and you will have to have it removed. I was frightened of a hospital and only 22 years old. My father was a Methodist minister and came and got me and took me to the hospital and left the children with my mother. She also complained about the abuse of a frequently drunken husband and said that he took little interest in the children. I had to be a mother and father both of my children. That's just awful. Miss Smalls was a seamstress of exceptional skill, and during the 1910s and 1920s, she supported herself with her children by taking in sewing, as her husband, a plumber by trade, had difficulty keeping a job. The bags packed for her one-way journey to Willard contained no clothing, souvenirs, or practical personal items, only her silver flatware, a Bible with three family photos tucked between the pages, and beautiful evidence of her handiwork. Quilt cover hand sewn applique cotton quilt top made approximately seven. Oh, wait, what is this? Oh, they're just describing what it is. So she made a white linen square table cover with flower designs, white on white. It was stained. Nicely made variation on the 9 patch, red and pink small flower pattern, cotton with white 5 squares by 5 squares. There's some staining and dirt on that one. But the loveliest piece of needlework found in Ethel's suitcase are much more personal. A christening gown with exquisitely detailed embroidery, finely worked matching baby booties, and the garments probably made from the infants who died. Oh, probably made for the infants that died. Yes, these are all the stories from this mental hospital. Willard in New York. She made a baby dress, a baby flannel nightgown, baby knitted cap, baby booties, white linen baby booties with white embroidery on the toe. You can't really. What's with the spoon? You can see some of it. I'll take pictures. A host of physical complaints. Ethel Smalls entered Willard with a number of physical complaints, and these only got worse over the years. Ethel believed that she was in the hospital to cure her medical problems, and she never asked to be released, as these problems continued to plague her for as long as she lived. Her symptoms of back pain, headaches, uh, gas upsets, and severe menstrual periods were dismissed as hypochondria or malingering by the Willard doctors. Today, Miss Smalls might be diagnosed with somatization disorder, a diagnosis describing mental and emotional distress expressed as physical symptoms. Huh. Although the history of abdominal surgery for ovarian tumor, she certainly had a physical substrate that gave rise to these endless complaints. Ethel clearly preferred to think of herself as suffering from physical ailments rather than accepting her various psychiatric diagnoses, like depression and schizophrenia, for which there's a scant evidence in the record. The reports of her mental condition Bella bore her talkativeness, which she readily acknowledged, and her habit of dissembling primarily by exaggerating her family's wealth and social status. These were annoying traits, no doubt, but hardly evidence of psychosis. I know. Yet, as a physically abused woman who had dealt with a miscarriage and the death of 2 babies, she certainly had cause for a great deal of emotional pain. No emotional outbursts or signs of depression showed up in her record. That's not my nature, Ethel responded when specifically questioned by a doctor. Rather, she was almost resolutely cheerful, except when it came to discussing her physical symptoms, and often industrious, helping around the ward in a rather officious manner, and tending to her prenatal needlework. Complaints of back pain, nausea, and worry about her heart and gallbladder. August 23rd, 1933. This is written by doctors. The patient is in fair physical health. She eats and sleeps well and is a good ward worker. She's quiet, agreeable, and causes no particular trouble on the ward, but is always talking about herself and her ailments. She expresses no other delusions or hallucinations. That was from Dr. Strong. I'm wondering, yeah, she had cancer. January 12th, 1948. Patient has remained in good physical health since last noted, although she is constantly complaining of many ailments. She does assist a little with ward work, but thinks she's doing a wonderful lot of work and the employees would be unable to get along without her. Aw. Sometimes she's very bossy. She takes some interest in her environment and converses with others. She's clean in habit and keeps her clothes tidy. The doctor's initial belief that she was a hypochondriac led them to ignore certain symptoms of real injury and disease. Miss Smalls broke her wrist in a fall early in her stay, but it was never set. She complained. I was going to say, there's got to be something wrong with her. Like, Miss Smalls broke her wrist and fell early in her stay, but it was never set, and she complained of pain and had limited range of motion thereafter. She also told anyone who would listen that she had a spinal injury at birth that caused constant backaches. Staff dismissed it as malingering, and not until she was x-rayed after a fall did the doctors find the evidence of her scoliosis. Wow. I get their patience, but come on. life and death on the ward. Ethel Smalls showed a sad ability to adapt herself to institutional life. Just a week after her arrival, Dr. Rexford noted that patient, since admission, had gotten along very comfortably, had been compliant, agreeable, assisting about the ward, has been moderately social with patients and nurses. When greeted, she responds promptly. A month later, she was friendly and good-natured, and generally in a happy mood and lively. According to the doctor, she denied all the statements made in the commitment papers. But oddly enough, he also mentioned that it was difficult to get her to express any abnormal ideas. Ethel also responded to ward life in a way that might not be expected of a woman with her religious background. Okay, so Dr. Rexford wrote on August 20th, 1930. It was discovered yesterday that she and Miss G, another patient, had been in the habit of getting into bed together, probably at night, but they were found in bed together in the in the daytime, sorry, and said to be having a jolly time. Who cares? Let her get her groove on. That's hilarious. You go, girls. Seems to be having a jolly time. Oh my god. When discovered by Miss McMahon, charge attendant of the ward, they giggled and chuckled and told her there was a place for her if she would like to get it. That's good. Oh my god. It is surprising to find such a straightforward and seemingly non-judgmental statement about lesbian sexuality in a psychiatric record from 1930. But in fact, there were consequences involved. Oh no. Hey, Heavenly Cow. I know. 3 times in 1 week. Don't worry about chatting. You just listen. I don't blame you. That is funny. Ethel was immediately transferred to another ward. Of course she was. And it is doubtful that she and Miss G had the opportunity to spend any more time alone together. Like, leave them alone. For the next 43 years, the notes in her record tell a fairly consistent story of Ethel Small's restricted life as a patient. Except for her frequent physical complaints, she was compliant, well-behaved, industrious, and pleasant to most people she encountered. She did not shirk from helping around the ward, but also had a bossy streak, expecting others to do things her way. She bragged about her family's non-existent wealth and sometimes mentioned that she was engaged to a man of means. Aside from knitting and crocheting, she was also an avid reader. In later years, she watched television daily. Ethel really made use of her parole card to get off the ward for entertainment or outdoor activities. They call it parole. Her grown children apparently visited her only once early on, but her brother and sister came to see her several times a year, sometimes taking her out for a car ride. She was never given any psychiatric medications. And by her 60s, no psychiatric symptoms at all were noted in the record. As she grew older, doctors and social workers approached her with the notion of moving to a nursing home or to a foster family for adults, but Ethel refused, pointing to her medical problems. After a bout of pneumonia in 1972, she developed congestive heart failure, and her condition gradually worsened until she died in her sleep a year later at the age of 83. It's good for her. Unlike most of her fellow patients, Ethel Smalls had relatives who kept in touch with her during her entire stay. Her brother, Alice Black, had her buried in the family plot in New York. Women, trauma, and psychiatry. Throughout history, violence and loss have sometimes driven women mad. Not that men did not suffer a similar fate at times, but women have been decidedly more often on the receiving end. Psychiatry has generally been complicit in this process. The vast majority of women and more than half of the men in psychiatric institutions today have experienced sexual or physical abuse before and after they were diagnosed as mentally ill. Many authors who have themselves experienced trauma and psychiatric treatment have pointed out that psychiatric care often means being traumatized again, that hospital practices such as seclusion, restraint, forced medication, whether witnessed or experienced on one's own body, are traumatic and in themselves and liable to worsen any pre existing trauma related condition or to set off post traumatic stress disorder for the very first time. I agree with that. Big time. Who can argue that a woman who was manhandled by several attendants, stripped, tied down, and forcibly injected should not experience this as a form of rape rather than a method of treatment? For trauma survivors, even less obviously intrusive practices, such as the regimentation of ward life, constraints on visits and communication, or the inability to take a quiet walk on the grounds, may aggravate their condition by taking away the sense of control over one's daily life that is a prerequisite for feeling safe. Uh-huh. Today, a woman like Ethel Smalls who enters the system at least has a chance that she might be asked, "What happened to you?" rather than "What's wrong with you?" In certain places. She might even be referred to a specialist who has experience working with trauma survivors. But in the 1930s, a woman beaten by her husband and mourning for her children would not have been considered a trauma survivor. In those days, only men returning from battle merited such designation, and so Ethel had to resign herself to a quiet, rudimentary life behind walls. So sad. Did you fall asleep to me reading, Claire? I think you did. That is sad, eh? All right, I'm gonna get off here. I got so much to do. I don't know how much I'm gonna do it, how much of it I'm gonna get done, but I'm gonna attempt it. Trying to find a way I can get either Leland's PS4 fixed or get a new one. They're so expensive. I can't afford it. So I'm trying to find like a payment plan or something. They did it for my laptop, but I can't find one for a PS4. Holy shit, Heavenly Cow. I really do hope you feel better. This is crazy. All right, you guys have a good night. I gotta take those pictures too. All right, have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. Yes, Thursday. Never mind. Tomorrow I'll be doing Jack the Ripper. Okay. Well, have a good night. Bye, guys. I need to have a Yeah, aren't they bolted? And I'm so live, aren't I? Oh my gosh. Sorry.